Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, December 12th work session of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. My name is Kiba Samuel and I serve as chair of the Planning Commission. And we are holding this meeting in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center in room 267 for viewing by the public and media. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Planning, Design, and Development Department's YouTube page. Before we move to introductions, and I'll probably recite this reminder quite a bit today, as we continue to stream our meetings live, we will need to state your name before speaking, not just making a motion or second. Okay, as people are watching, they're getting the broad view of the dais and not an up close and personal shot of your face. So to help staff and public differentiate who's speaking what, if you could please state your name prior to commenting. Thank you. We will begin introductions with our commissioners, beginning with Mr. Vice Chair and moving to my right.
Vice Chair Philip Gusman.
Courtney Rhodes, Planning Commission.
Douglas Welton, Planning Commission.
Rebecca Wilden, Planning Commission.
Andrew Blumenthal, Planning Commission.
Will Russell, Planning Commission.
Rick Winiker, Planning Commission.
Terry Lansdale, Planning Commission.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Clayton Seeley, Planning Commission.
Shauna Neely, Planning Commission.
Catherine Mahoney, Planning Staff.
Kathy Cornett, Planning Staff.
Alicia Osborne, Planning Staff. Allison Craig, Interim Planning Director.
Candace Rory, Planning Staff.
Now that we've gotten introductions out of the way, thank you, everybody. We will now take a moment to suggest any edits or amendments to the minutes from our November 14th work session. And if there are none, we will entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve, Wilden.
Welton, I'll second.
Motion by Wilden, second by Welton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Move on to new business now. The first thing I will say that is that I appreciate every one of the commissioners who have made a suggestion, commented, or asked questions regarding the process of our own initiative to reach out to community and in efforts to accomplish our work program item number 1, I believe it is. We have gotten a couple of different pieces of feedback that I want to share and then discuss a little bit of level setting as we begin that effort and before we get too deep. We have a goal based on our adopted work program for 2023 to increase the community's awareness. And I'm losing my voice. It's just allergies, I promise. Awareness of Planning Commission, its charge, our duties. And that is twofold. Number one, to help us make sure that we're more public facing, make sure that the community knows that we're aware and accessible to them. And a couple of other objectives behind that work program item. So as we began to discuss this, I believe it was last month, actually, and the month prior when we actually did the adoption, we began getting feedback from our different commissioners about opportunities to host events or different points of contact that they have made or initiated. And the feedback that we're receiving regarding those efforts is the reason behind this discussion. I think that we all have our different circles that we are a part of, different networks and things of that nature. And I think that as we are reaching out to our partners to achieve item number 1 of our work program, it's important that it be fairly carefully coordinated. And so somewhat of the I would call it criticism is that some of the efforts are duplicitous in nature. We're contacting the same people with the same request. Folks don't know who to reply to or, how to coordinate it. So I figured we would discuss the best way to achieve that before we actually map out and put on a calendar where we want to be and when. Excuse me. So I want to just remind everyone to put their phones on silent mostly, and then begin the discussion. And I'd like to hear from the dais about the best way to achieve the coordinated effort, how to best be more collaborative and more effective. Excuse me. So Mr. Vice Chair and I have already made some appearances, not necessarily specifically because of work program item number 1. They just presented themselves fairly recently after the adoption of that work program. I think the first would have been the opportunity that I took to address the Board of County Commissioners. Number 1, which has been very fruitful, by the way. Number 2, Mr. Vice Chair's opportunity to address the fall 2020 class of the 2040 Planning Academy. And then most recently, a fall in the lap opportunity for me to address during the town hall for at-large member Lawana Mayfield a couple of weeks ago. So we've kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call that a head start because again, they were very uncoordinated, just very, we didn't want to miss the opportunity. But going forward, we want to make sure that everyone who wants to participate can do so in the most effective way possible, number 1. Number 2, and then to get feedback from those who would like to have a voice in how the process might work. I believe in executive committee meeting recently, we decided that we would set dates for, I think we had a target of 3 meetings that we would host as a planning commission. And we decided, and I think those target dates are all between January, actually by May, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pull up the work program really quick, unless somebody else has a time certain for me. Okay, so it says beginning January 2023. Actually, beginning November of 2022, we co-host a minimum of 3 is what we set and adopted. And the target schedule was bi-monthly. And that was just to give ourselves some grace in terms of being able to accomplish all the things that we want to in this work program. I would like to entertain discussion around work program item number 1 and how to best achieve a coordinated and effective strategy. And in my view, we should have a person or maybe a person and a staff member who are our main points of contact so that we can really hone in and make sure that we are remaining conscious of staff's bandwidth, because remember, although these are meetings that we will host, ideally, preferably, we would have a staff member present with us to answer those concerns that are best addressed by staff. So being very conscious of their own initiative that they will kick off at the top of the year, I want you guys' feedback around how our efforts can be a lot more collaborative, coordinated, and effective. And any hands raised? Remember to state your name prior to commenting.
Hi, this is Harvey. I definitely like the idea of the coordinated effort. I mean, I don't know if it's us kind of circling through or just kind of reviewing what those networks are. You know, some of us have contacts with the same groups of folks, but if we can kind of start there and so we don't duplicate, you know, so if I know, let's say, for example, I know that the folks on the West End that I speak to, that if that is more so, if that is a space where there is no, I don't want to say this, no duplication, then we can then move on to the next one, say, okay, well, I'll take care of those corridors. And then we kind of just.
Okay, so I will, I think I began the conversation trying to level set. So let me continue along those lines. I think that I will tell you what my preference is, and then you guys can add, take away,
Okay.
reframe. I'm envisioning that there's a separate subcommittee for this. Just so that there's a team of people working to make sure that we're not circumventing staff's efforts on their public engagement efforts, so that we're not being duplicitous, and so that we are most effective. I do also envision that this subcommittee, and this could be a minimum of 2 people, may have a list of, okay, these are the groups that we want to get feedback from or reach out to. I can tell you that I don't want to limit our commissioners' ability to reach out to their own personal networks. I just want to make sure that if we are making those attempts at that outreach, that it goes to 1 or 2 people in our body, and that those 2 people decide, okay, we've gotten these 5 places that we can appear. These venues have already agreed to host us. Here is the dates that they have available. So I'm thinking that a subcommittee may say, hey, we've got these 3 places that we can appear the 3rd week of January, these 2 places that we can appear the 2nd week of March. And that is what I'm looking to accomplish fairly quickly. So I just wanted to level set there. I can tell you that, again, just to help level set, we've got Avid Exchange, who is 90% on board. We've got Camp North End, thanks to Commissioner Seeley. We have potential opportunity to present at CPCC as an opportunity, thanks to Commissioner Rhodes. So we're getting these partnerships formed already. But again, so that, if Winokur, Harvey, and Lansdale all have CPCC contacts, we're not doing that again, or double booking, so to speak. So we want to make sure that as we are making these efforts, again, that they be coordinated. So I do agree that we need, and I guess let's establish the time frame. And it's been hard for me to do this because, again, being very conscious that staff is going to embark on their own engagement efforts. We don't want to jump the gun or pull away from their crowd, so to speak, or vice versa. We don't want people to have to compete if we happen to fall on the same date. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do. And if I had known that we would have such excitement from our commissioners, I probably would have established a work subcommittee when we established a work program. So my apologies for not identifying that opportunity a few months ago, but I am open to discussion. Those are just my initial thoughts. And we have about 15 minutes of additional discussion time.
Commissioner Gusman, I'm willing to step forward and help with the coordination and leadership of this subcommittee. I do need a person or two at least who's engaged in some of the areas that we're specifically targeting. Would be helpful to help make sure that we do our best at delivering for those parts of the city. And I think once we can establish that to Chairperson Keith Samuel's, pardon me, perspective, that I think we can generate a list relatively quick, perhaps even by the end of the year, of at least targeted dates and locations, especially knowing some of the feedback that we've already, and I won't say offers, but guidance we've gotten so far.
Yeah, and I will add to that. The government center is an event venue that I left off. That was an obvious, but also please keep in mind that this is not where we go to certain neighborhoods to talk about community engagement, UDO, et cetera. This is Planning Commission. Here's what we do. Here's how you can reach us. Here is how we affect your daily lives. Here is how you can join if you are so interested, type of talks. So if that happens to be in a particular neighborhood, that's great. But I just wanted to clarify that it won't be exclusive to that particular neighborhood. RJ, you mentioned West End. We can have a meeting in West End, but it will be open to the masses. We can have an event at Camp North End, but it's not just for North residents. It will be open to the masses. Same thing for CP. We want to host in locations that have easy accessibility, parking, and space. Not that we're going to be drawing crowds of 1,000, but just those are some of the things to consider. Please continue discussion.
This is Commissioner Blumenthal. I think to Commissioner Harvey's point, thankfully, we kind of have a group assembled here that are, to a certain extent, leaders in the community, right? And in theory, you're all well connected. So it does make sense to have, in my opinion, a subcommittee that acts as almost gatekeepers in terms of contact management. I mean, whether it's true or not, as we go through this, we want to make sure that we present kind of a united front as a commission as it relates to the 3 events that we're hosting for the commission, but even beyond that. So the last thing we want is 4 people all reaching out to the same person about the same thing, because it just looks disorganized. And so I think that subcommittees, one of their roles can be, again, contact management, kind of assigning, for lack of a better word, ownership over a contact or an organization or something like that. Both as it relates to our 3 planning commission oriented meetings, but also moving forward as it relates to other community outreach, so that you know who you can reach out to get to a certain person. And then you can kind of keep even a list of who has which contacts, right? And I know that's kind of it's taking that responsibility a step further, but as we go through this, and again, we referenced this in the executive committee meeting, like there's 4 or 5 people here that all know people at Camp North End, right? Commissioner Seeley has already gone ahead and made that outreach. And so again, I think it makes sense to keep that contact through him. The one thing that would be imperative, of course, is kind of clearing a contact with the subcommittee prior to reaching out, just in case they've already been contacted, and then kind of CCing you and whoever your compatriot is on this on any communications, so that you guys are aware of what's going on. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. But again, it could end up being very haphazard and disorganized if everybody's just reaching out to all the people that they know without clearing it with kind of some sort of a subcommittee body first.
Commissioner Russell, I just want to make sure I understand something here before I go into my point. So is it my understanding that we're going to be the headliner? We're going to be top of the ticket on anything that we do as far as planning commission?
No. For work program item number 1, we are hosts. For work program item number 2, we're collaborating with staff. So not everything that we do, but the meetings that we're hosting, yes, you're coming to meet with the planning commission.
So that's what I was trying to get to. So if we're going to be top of the ticket, and not to throw a wet blanket on anything, but if people don't know much about us and don't know what we do, they're really not going to be inclined to come out and talk to us initially, because we don't have a point of contact. We're open and cold. So I think that there needs to be a piggyback operation, at least initially, to get us out there so that we can then headline the ticket. As somebody who's been engaged in planning efforts in my community, like the first couple of meetings are always hard, like pulling teeth. But once you nail something, once you get into the zeitgeist of the community or your area, that you can start to draw people out. And so as a suggestion, because I don't like to criticize without bringing a suggestion, I think that number 2 is a perfect opportunity for us to introduce ourselves in the context of which we work, because we're talking about doing community area planning, which is going to freak a lot of people out because they don't know what that is. And so for us to step forward and say, hey, we're involved in helping planning staff not only explain this, but also implement it, then that gives us something as a launching pad to then run our own thing. I think we'll have a hard time being successful if we just want to lead the ticket without any type of introduction or priming the pump.
Commissioner Seeley, if I can, that was kind of my thought process as well. I feel like it's smart to lead with number 2 and work towards number 1. You know, with my conversations with Camp North End and with vendors there, it would be great to do something like get a table at a fashion show that is, organized by Black Market CLT or Duff and SWAT, and actually have people come by and talk to us when they're already engaged in something like that and get to know us, and then work towards having something that we're kind of a headliner on, if that makes any sense. So, and I think with this process, with the 4, it's smart to kind of divide and conquer and call them north, south, east, and west. And granted, we will be inviting everyone to the city, but to have geographical parameters that are in centrally located places with accessibility parking, like everything that you were saying. But as far as a committee goes, I'm more than happy to volunteer for that committee.
Okay, so geographic location, dates, audiences, we've discussed all of that to the point that we first collaborate and then branch out on our own. I would challenge that thought process in that that's not what we discussed at the planning retreat, number 1. So that's not the idea by which we adopted item number 1. Yes, we still will communicate and collaborate with staff on engagement efforts. We do plan to be in attendance at community area planning engagement throughout that series. However, item number 1, we will not be leading a planning effort. We're not leading a planning effort. That's an education effort. So item number 1, the goal, if you guys remember from the retreat, was to educate the public around what the commission does. I don't think I'm going to take staff's lead on that because it hasn't happened thus far, and that's not their charge. Right? So again, going back to the retreat and discussions surrounding item number 1, it was the primary idea was to lead our own efforts to educate the public about the Planning Commission. We're not going to we probably won't get 20 people at our first meeting. That's not going to negate the fact that it's on our work program and the item I would like to see accomplished. So my measure of success, so to speak, is not going to be the number of attendees. It's whether or not we've made the effort. So with that, and along that vein, and again, with the discussion that we introduced, item number 1, the discussion that we had around the retreat, and the discussion that we had at adoption in our October meeting, I do not think that the precursor or prerequisite is the collaboration with staff. Now, if the subcommittee meets and they say, okay, well, the first opportunity that we have falls around community area planning, then great. But that would be a coincidence, not the intent.
This
Okay.
is Commissioner Wilden. I do kind of want to push back on that just a little bit, Commissioner Samuels, just because there are at least 5 people currently on the commission that were not at the retreat. So I do just kind of want to level set on that. I definitely want to be a part of this subcommittee. I do definitely agree with others that have said like we should definitely co-host and then do a public meeting solely on this. And I also know that there are other commissions and boards that are also wanting to do public engagement as well. And so us partnering with them, I think would be a great idea. And I know of at least 3 that just come to mind that are also thinking about doing public meetings on education around their boards.
This is Commissioner Rhodes. I guess I take a different approach to it. I thought that for one, it was for us to educate, and for 2, for us to host, but also collaborate with others. So like the county commissioners, like inviting county commissioners to come, inviting city council to come, of course, having someone from the planning staff to come, but this was our opportunity to educate. So say, for example, we talk about CPCC. When I talked to Chair Samuels about the collaboration, my initial thought was, hey, we could collaborate with the government group clubs and groups there, so then they could put it out to their community, the college community. Why? Because they want to be politically involved. Why? Because a lot of the CPCC students are actually citizens of the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and they plan on staying here. So it's a good buy-in for them to, one, learn, and for two, for us to have that market, like it keeps going. And if we also invite county commissioners, they will get the word out as well. So you have a bandwagon. But I think that the fear of us, oh, we won't have anybody to show up because we're the planning commission. I don't know. I disagree with that. I think if we put in the work for it and see what happens, it's okay. Like Chair Samuel said, if only 4 people show up, like we can take that back and say, okay, well, what did we do wrong? Or how can we go back to the table and make sure that we have more people to do it? But I don't think that we need to wait around for the community area plan. I just don't think that it's necessary to wait on that. And then second of all, I'll serve on the chair, the committee for that as well.
Okay. I think I will recognize Commissioner Walton and Commissioner Neely next.
Thanks, Commissioner Welton. I will just add a couple of points. Geography, I think, is very important because we do, we're a big city, and so we should northeast, southwest this thing as much as possible, I believe. Second, I will just add a minor bit of pushback about tying it to communities. I had an opportunity to go out and speak to a community a couple of weeks ago, and they had no clue what we do. I got up and was able to provide a good bit of opportunity for those folks to be enlightened. And that was 50 people that we might not get if we do this thing as a solo parade. So something to think about.
So this is Commissioner Shauna Neely. As a caveat to what Commissioner Welton was saying, and as I'm seeing some overlap in both 1 and 2, is there an opportunity, and to try to move the conversation forward? So on a type of meeting, so for example, if there is a public official or some city, county elected official having a meeting, can we try to emphasize program target number 1? If it's around community area planning, can we try to emphasize number 2? So that in effect, we are hitting both targets and still, hitting the meetings, but then emphasizing education in one type of meeting and then the community planning process in another. Is that an opportunity?
This is Commissioner Welton. I would say that's an excellent idea.
So I don't think that we might be able to get to a consensus here on the actual strategy behind how we might achieve item number 1. Excuse me. And I will just remind that item number 1 has 2 parts. So the conversation that we had around planning and hosting public meetings, and then the conversation that we had around co-hosting a minimum of 3 public meetings, those two do overlap in that we wanted to make sure, because the discussion was around partnering with your board or county commissioners or tag teaming with a city council members, town hall meeting, et cetera, where you already have that captive audience, and to introduce the commission and tell them about who we are, what we do. That was really the focus behind point A. But then during adoption, we decided to break out and really hold ourselves accountable for not wanting to piggyback all the time. So point B was born when we adopted the work program, because we said, yes, we will partner where there is an opportunity. But again, the point of item number 1 was to have our own initiative, to make our own efforts in educating the public. So we felt it necessary to say, hey, of these 4, 3 of them, we're going to play co-host or host to.
Minimum of 3.
Minimum of 3. And so I just want to clarify that. And although everyone on this dais today wasn't present during either the retreat or the adoption, I want to identify that that was not by intent, number 1. And by number 2, the work program is adopted at the same time every year. We will always be very conscious of feedback and opportunities to tweak our program. So we'll always be open to that. But the absence of a commissioner during the adoption of the work program doesn't negate its validity or challenge its validity. And I just wanted to highlight that. We will tag team to bring all of our work program items to fruition. The best way to do that is basically what we're discussing now. And I just want to identify again that we decided that over the years, we've been trying to get this accomplished, and it hasn't helped through the comp program, the comp plan engagement series. It hasn't helped through the UDO engagement series to help people inform of what the commission is. We have been in attendance through several of those, but there's still this very innocent ignorance of the public about there being this vetting authority for these documents and to counsel on rezoning petitions and such. I think that for time's sake, we will probably go ahead and cap this conversation here. I would ask that so the idea also of a subcommittee was an idea. As I've heard, I think there was a total of 4 or 5 people who said, yes, I want to serve on the committee. We don't want to make this too big, right? And one of the rules that we had around subcommittees in the work program was to be aware of public meeting notice and to make sure that our city attorney, who is counsel to the body, is comfortable with the number in a committee, that we capped committee members to 3. So if you have an interest, number 1, is there a consensus on establishing a subcommittee to take this charge? Or do we designate one person to be the main contact for coordinating our outreach? Now, with either answer, and I'm going to ask for hands raised on this, but with either answer, it doesn't preclude, as Commissioner Blumenthal kind of alluded to, if it's he and Commissioner Harvey, for instance, that are the subcommittee, they can assign Seeley or Samuel or Rhodes to say, hey, these are your 3 points of contact that we feel you'll be most effective in attracting or getting a win for us. Contact these 3, give them these dates, or see what dates that we are have agreement on, et cetera. So everyone can be involved is kind of what that the rest of that vision was. So it wasn't so that we give hypothetically Harvey and Blumenthal this list of 100 groups or entities to contact. It is, how can we be most coordinated and collaborative and effective? So with that, Who is in favor of establishing a subcommittee for this purpose? Hands raised. That's unanimous. Having said that, I would like for those that are interested in serving or those who have someone to nominate to serve, and this is up for discussion as well. Would you rather, for time's sake, send that email to executive body being me as chair, Mr. Gusman as vice chair, vice chair of the zoning committee, Commissioner Walton, vice chair of the planning committee, Commissioner Blumenthal. So Samuel, Gusman, Blumenthal, Walton, send us your interest inquiry, or if you have someone to nominate to that subcommittee, we could do it that way, or we can squash it right now. Ideally, and this is again, for the comfort level of legal counsel who is advisor to this body, cap the committee to 3, the subcommittee to 3. So do we vote on who that is now, or do we nominate on who that is now? Or would you guys rather send it through email and that email content be published? Either way, this is something that we're looking to achieve and really hit the ground on fairly, very quickly.
Interest of time,
I'm-
I'd say.
I'm hearing email. Is everyone have consensus with sending email with your interest? And, or if you have someone to nominate, send that information via email. Is everybody okay with that? Is everybody also okay with a date certain of this coming Friday for that information? I'm seeing all heads nod. Is there any objection to that process? Hearing no objection, that's what shall happen. Also, time certain. This Friday is the 16th, no later than the 20th. And I say that because executive meeting happens on the 19th. I will send out the results of that, or who the subcommittee will be, in coordination with all members of the executive committee. Okay. I thank you for this lively discussion. I look forward to accomplishing work program item number 1, A and B. And with that, we will move to our next item of new business. And I see our community area planning for 2040 comprehensive plan team here with us, Catherine Mahoney and Alicia Osborne. Dr. Robin Byers is here with us as well. And I have on tap that Catherine is going to bring us up to date on that engagement process and alignment rezoning. You want to tee up that conversation, please, to us, Ms. Craig?
Thank you. Yeah, just say really briefly that something that we're all very excited about is getting started on the community area planning process. And this will officially launch in January of next year. So we are right up on top of this. And so there are 2 people, I think Catherine's mostly doing the presentation today. So Catherine's is really managing a lot of the the community area planning process. But we also added a new team member, Dr. Robin Byers. She works in Alicia's team, and she's helping the UDO team to lead the alignment rezoning. So she's going to say a few words after Catherine's presentation. But the presentation today is really just to talk about how the projects are working together, the main components of what is in an area plan, and really what our engagement strategy and kickoff starting in January will look like. So with that, I will hand it over to Catherine. Yeah, sorry. I just haven't been.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Catherine Mahoney. I'm Senior Project Manager with the Long Range Division, and I'll be co-leading community area planning with Kathy Cornett, who's our program manager. And as Allison said today, sharing information about community area planning as we approach our kickoff in January. You've already received a lot of information over the last 2 months about the project scope and schedule. So we'll just review this kind of at a high level today and then spend the other half of the time talking about our kickoff in January. So the genesis of community area planning, or the reason why we're doing it, I say what's not working.
Still want us to cover your presentation.
Thanks. So the why, is really originates within the comprehensive plan, which you all know was adopted in June of 21 and provides the guidance for the vision for our future growth and development. And so it's a citywide document, and policies within that document that talk about the type and intensity of development were translated after its adoption to specific geographies in the policy map effort, which was then adopted in March of 22. And then more recently, our land development regulations were consolidated and updated so that they're aligned with the vision of the comprehensive plan. So that's all the great work that's happened to date. And next, to keep things moving, we need to develop our community area plans, which again are called for within the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan includes a planning framework, which provides a hierarchy of how all future planning should occur, so that the efforts are aligned and aimed at implementing the vision of the 2040 comprehensive plan. So this is really just us taking the next step to putting the comprehensive plan into action. And our partners in entitlement services, led by Robin and Laura Harmon, they are going to be mapping the new Unified Development Ordinance districts. And the goal of their effort is to map those districts so they're aligned or they match our place type designations as shown on the policy map. So there's coordination to make sure that the outcomes of the two efforts are compatible with one another. So the two projects, community area planning and alignment rezoning, are separate efforts with different scopes and different outcomes, but they will be coordinated over the next 2 years because there's a relationship between the efforts. And we want to make sure that the final outcomes are compatible. We also want to make it easier for the community to understand and participate. So that's really the genesis of why we're coordinating these two projects. It's to make sure our engagement efforts are aligned, our communications are aligned, and then the technical work on the back end is compatible. So as stated, we are managing the community area planning side of things, and the purpose is to really take the citywide guidance within the comprehensive plan and refine it at a smaller geography, or provide more community level guidance for development. This planning approach is similar to planning efforts done in the past. So we work with the community to develop recommendations. We're utilizing larger geographies in this planning effort as shown on the screen. And the value of that is really to foster collaboration amongst our neighborhoods within the geographies, and then provide a level of efficiency to generate this type of guidance at this scale. This slide outlines the different components that you can expect to find in our community area plans. So the first component, or the first chapter, is setting the stage. With all plans, you start with the vision and goals of what you're trying to accomplish. Because we're building on the comprehensive plan, we will be talking about how the citywide vision and goals relate to that geography and how that geography plays a role in realizing that vision. We'll also identify existing conditions within the geography and any challenges or opportunities that need to be addressed through the planning effort. The second major component of our area plans are going to be focused around creating great places. So this is where we look at the citywide, or the place types that were designated at a citywide level, consider the unique characteristics and opportunities within a geography, and recommend place type refinements based on the community needs. We'll also be looking at focus areas within our community geographies. These are areas that are expected to see significant growth or change over time. And so they might need additional policies or direction to make sure that growth happens in coordination or aligned with the vision. The third major component of our plans are we're calling supporting the vision. This is when we are working with our interdepartmental partners like CDOT, CATS, water, to identify known needs or perhaps new needs in terms of infrastructure projects or supportive programs that are needed to realize the vision. And then the last component that you can expect to find in these plans is an implementation strategy, where we're realistic about the recommendations within, are they a short, mid, or long-term timetable? So you've seen this slide. We expect to do this work in coordination with our partners over the next 2 years. In 23, we will be in the community with the alignment rezoning team, talking about place types and zoning and potential refinements. Then in 24, we'll be back out in the community with our interdepartmental partners like CDOT and CATS, talking about projects and programs. The goal is to have 14 draft plans by the end of 24, and then we'll go through a review and adoption process beginning in 25. So as I've said, the expected outcome are area plans, which include a series of maps and recommendations related to place types, projects, programs, that sort of thing. And once the plans are adopted, the place type designation or the place type refinements recommended within them will be incorporated to the citywide policy map. And we expect that as we go through the next 2 years, we will hear from the community about potential changes that are needed to the comprehensive plan. So we'll carry those forward to future update efforts. We've shared information about our communications and engagement strategy over the last few months. The goals of both efforts are to be equitable. That's from the comprehensive plan, and we're carrying that forward. That means we're providing different opportunities to engage for different populations, specifically our underserved populations, realizing that not everybody needs the same. We are also trying to be inclusive, meaning we're providing different opportunities at different times and on different platforms so that we can reach as many people as possible. And then our communications in particular needs to be accessible. So we're really trying to use easy to understand language because this is just complex stuff. So the key takeaway for our communication strategy is that we're using different messages and tactics based on our audience's needs. Our engagement strategy, in order to be equitable and inclusive, we are going to be using a variety of tactics to ensure that we have a constant presence, that we're talking and listening to as many stakeholders as possible, and that we're working collaboratively with our partners, both city and county staff, and then appointed and elected officials. So kicking off in January, we're going to use primarily our constant engagement tactics, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The goal of our January kickoff is to raise awareness about the 2-year effort, to share information, and then promote the workshops and online opportunities that are available beginning in spring of 23. So from the constant bucket of tools that we have, we'll be providing a lot of information on our website, including video and FAQs. We'll be sending out a newsletter at the end of January to over 26,000 of our subscribers. We'll be launching our social media campaign and our ambassador toolkit. The toolkit will be similar to what we've had available for the policy map and the comprehensive plan. And within that, there are social templates that you all can use to help us spread the word. We'll be publishing 14 community reports, which are essentially story maps that do 3 things. They provide an overview of who's in the community today, so kind of your basic demographic information, an idea of what growth is expected to come by 2040, so you're understanding the challenges ahead, and then based on the comprehensive plan's vision and goals, what is that community's greatest needs in order to ensure that growth supports everyone. So it's really kind of just setting the table for our conversations that we'll have beginning in the spring. But we're calling them our community reports, and they're essentially story maps that provide that level of information. And then we'll be kicking off our community area toolkit, which I know you all heard about and seem interested in. The toolkit is designed to really provide another equitable and inclusive engagement opportunity. The purpose of it is to help neighborhoods identify valuable resources within their community, which then the planning process will essentially try to protect, right? We want to know what's important so we can protect it or enhance it in the future. It's equitable because it includes a range of activities seen here on the screen, from sharing oral and visual histories to identifying needs or important spaces in architecture. And then also any kind of safety concerns or potential opportunity sites. So there's really a whole range of activities included within it. And it's designed for everyone to participate in. We are really encouraging that neighbors work together, but there's guidance about how you can do that either as a team or as an individual. And then everyone's, input can be submitted either online, we're digitizing it, or you can complete a hard copy and scan it, email, or send it via mail. So that will be available with our January kickoff. And then the ask of you all today is really to help us start spreading the word. You have networks, you have colleagues. If you'll let them know, come January, go to their website, start digging into all the materials that we'll have, and then an idea of when the workshops will be kicking off. So that's just a quick review of the project scope and schedule, an idea of what January looks like. I'll stop and take questions or.
I see Commissioner Seeley, Gusman, Lansdale, and Russell with hands raised. We will begin with Seeley and move to my right.
Is there a plan, like as far as the chronology of how each area is approached? I was appointed chair of the NODA NBA for the vision committee, so I would be involved on both ends of the spectrum here. Do you know how things are rolling out there? Because I think it would be important for various neighborhood associations to start talking to one another and start engaging. I'm setting my budget for the committee by next week. So I definitely want to make sure we have a space in NODA that we can actually be part of.
Yeah, so it is a citywide kickoff. All 14 geographies will be going.
Simultaneously?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a citywide kickoff in 23. And then the workshops, every community will participate in a workshop that's offered on 3 different days throughout 23. That sequence of when each geography will have a workshop will be published on the website. If not first week in January, very soon thereafter. And so, yeah, you'll know when we'll be in your community.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Gusman, Commissioner Gusman. As we're starting to, no, definitely not. As we're starting to reach out, and I've had the opportunity to address a couple of groups of really committed people. The single best question they had after saying the area plans are coming, or we've got more stuff, and a lot of pointing to January. They were like, how do we make sure we get the email? Do we have online signups? I have access to the master email list for a couple of the groups I spoke to. So my plan was to make sure I just forward it all to the people who manage those. But going forward, I might not always be able to reach out to everybody I address. What do you got?
The sign up here is available on the project website. We basically have been building that list since the comprehensive plan. It's the same sign up here. And then if you signed up during comp plan, you were carried forward the policy map and then through community area planning. So just direct them there, please.
Russell.
Would you mind going back to the 14 geography map?
Sure.
So I have a question more about process than outreach. Considering that the cities in the past done area plans that are a lot smaller, these are large geographies. And I know that one of the tenets of the UDO and the comp plan is to retain our charm and character. So how are you going to balance kind of the differing opinions and growth patterns and geographies at large? Like, I'm just going to pick one here. If I'm looking at Northeast, Middle, and Outer, you've got a university, mostly single family homes, but then you've also, which are not going to change very much. They're going to be fairly static over the next 16 years. But then you look at the light rail and you look at Tryon, which are going to turn over very quickly and probably be a lot different in 5 years than they will be today. So how are you going to balance development in sort of those higher areas versus things that are more static? And then how do you balance those opinions of how a geography that big should look in the future?
So the geography that size is not going to be homogeneous. There will be areas of growth and areas of stability or less change. And that guidance comes from the comprehensive plan. Our neighborhoods are going to see some incremental change, but for the most part, we are looking to protect them and focus the majority of our growth in our corridors and centers. So that's going to be reflected, carried forward, translated to these geographies where we say, here's your corridor and your center, university, blue line. This is where you can expect to see the majority of the housing units and jobs accommodated. And then supportive policies for neighborhoods, apply over here. We basically use like a map with, you add your policy L1 applies here, L2 applies there. So it's not going to be a one size fits all for this entire geography. It will be tailored to the needs throughout it.
Commissioner Lansdale and then Wilden.
Yeah, I have many questions, but I'll first start with the community area toolkit. Lansdale asking about community area toolkit. So if you want to bring that main slide up at the end, would be great. So I'm not trying to tell anything at this point, but just to ask if you guys are going to include existing plans associated with each area.
That's an assessment that's been done internally. We know the policies on the books and where the new direction might not be, or might be a little bit different. And that's something we'll talk about with the community.
Sure. And the reason why I bring this up specifically in my mind, because we're now combining by the map, let's just say Wilmore neighborhood and Dilworth, right? They're going to be together where they in the past may not have been together in how they viewed the community and their area plans and their planning efforts. So I think having that layer somewhere in there would be certainly beneficial so that we can begin the conversation about where we are, right? The visual histories, the oral histories of these communities, including those layers of those previous planning efforts, those previous policy efforts. I think it would help streamline that community engagement piece, at least in my mind, but I may be an outlier here. The second piece is that when we talk about outreach to the business category, how I don't understand how that's going to really work. I mean, when we talk about businesses, do we reach out to the fast food owner and operator, or do we reach out to the land owner? Or, I mean, how do you get to the level of granularity for engagement for people who are making the decisions for the properties?
I mean, we have different resources that may capture the landowner or may capture a business sector, not necessarily the particular owner of every drive-through. And that's the level of engagement that we seek through this effort.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Wilden, so I'm probably going to bring this up every single time we talk about the community area plan. How many touch points will there be with the city council? I remember watching the city council meeting around the comp plan, and there were a lot of folks on the dais who are currently still on the dais who said that they were not consulted. And so I just kind of want to know how many touch points will there actually be?
We have a schedule of the frequency that we'd like to be in front of them, but they have a lot of business they're attending to. I'll defer to Allison if she wants to.
Sure. I mean, we certainly learned a lot from the comprehensive plan process and engage early and often, I think is a good way that we will be approaching this. And so, but as Catherine mentioned, there is a lot of other items on the council agenda. And so we'll utilize committees, certainly the Transportation Planning and Development Committee, as well as full council when we have the opportunity. But I think it is very important to make sure that they're engaged, because we also are going to be spanning multiple election cycles too. And so that's another element that makes it interesting. So.
Commissioner Gusman.
To Allison's point, I would volunteer that will be one of the key messages that we'll need to be delivering when we are co-hosting with some of these elected officials as well. So regardless, we'll talk about this more later, but I think that's one of the key ways we can make it part of their story as well, that they're helping share out with their community.
And just to the point of this, Commissioner Welton, to that point, though, election season starts about the middle of next year. So that could put us in football mode, so to speak.
So you notice that the request for adoption, though, is not this fall. We've considered those things.
Okay, and if there are no other questions for Ms. Mahoney, thank you so very much for bringing that forward. Ms. Craig.
Yes, I just wanted to give Robin an opportunity to come up and talk for a moment about the alignment rezoning process. So I mentioned that Robin is the implementation manager, works in Alicia's team in long-range planning. And just because that process is going to be certainly very complicated, and also really wanting to make sure we're working with the area planning team, Robin has offered to work with Laura to help lead the alignment rezoning process. And so she's new to the team. I know she's been before you all to talk about, I believe, the annual report and the dashboard, among other things, but wanted to give Robin a few minutes just to give you her overview of what she sees ahead.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to come before you guys today in this new role to say that you guys will be seeing a lot of me in the near future, or different members of the team. We look forward to continuing to coordinate with Catherine, Kathy, and Alicia on the community area planning process. We're working on that now. I hope to be able to come back before you guys in January with more details. What I will try to promise is that we will not overwhelm you with too many details from two projects that are happening on a concurrent schedule, so that we can really utilize you guys as best as possible throughout this whole process and help this be successful. But I've been very fortunate to have Catherine, Kathy, and Alicia to help bring me on board, and Laura and the other people on the alignment rezoning team. So we're going to continue to coordinate in 2023. And then continue through in 2024 for adoption, 2025, 2026. We'll see. At this point, I haven't presented much, so I don't know if you guys have any questions, but if you have any comments or questions, feel free to load me up, and then I will be able to present back next month.
Commissioner Welton, are you public facing? Because somebody asked me a question about alignment rezoning, and I didn't really know where to send them yet. And so if they ask me in a month, I might send them to you, but I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do either. So how public facing are you in that regard?
I think that's really up to Allison, but I'll answer. If someone sends me an email, I'll make sure it gets to the right person. If it's
Okay, I kind of figured that.
I mean, I think there's, certainly in the early stages, so they may not be able to fully answer the question yet, but happy to take questions and get back to people as we learn more.
These folks are just trying to navigate what happens between now and next June and that sort of thing. So,
yep. I mean, the people want to know where they can get information, and so connect them for sure. And as we learn more, we can update people.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else for Dr. Robin? Sorry, Dr. Byers.
I really don't mind. Most people call me Dr. Robin, so you can stick with that and not apologize. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I will be happy to yield back about 30 minutes of your time today. I do want to touch on future work session agenda topics. The December planning, nope, it's there. So also at the December 20th meeting, Dr. Robin, I think, was still planning to lead us through dashboard test drive. I hope her new role doesn't interfere. Okay. With that, thank you so very much. And again, the executive committee will meet on the 19th, which is Monday at 3:15. Future work session topics. I just wanted to make mention that parking continues to be somewhat of a topic in development for our city, as it is in many cities throughout the United States. And as we are a planning body, I think executive committee we've touched on this a time or two over the last 12 months about when might we explore how we kind of change how we view existing structures. We have our share of decks and parking lots, as many cities do. We've been developing for the past few decades around the automobile. But as we continue making strides and efforts towards a more multimodal city, how do we explore opportunities for what a parking deck may look like 10, 20 years from now, what a parking lot might look like 10, 20 years from now? How might we explore repurposing a parking deck or parking lot, et cetera? What are other cities doing? So just to, as we begin the community planning process, I think we have some of that. I mean, Charlotte is a very automobile dependent city still, and we're not going to flip that switch overnight by any means. But how do we begin to explore opportunities for what used to be considered required, beneficial and necessary pieces of development into how do we repurpose those? Or some of these areas will now be considered underdeveloped. And as the hyper development begins to kind of hit our city and continue, what might these structures opportunity for repurposing look like, or the redevelopment of those types of lots and structures? Obviously, we're not buying parking decks and parking lots, but just continue to explore that particular topic as it continues to be hot in our neck of the woods, so to speak. And we have a techie around the dais. And as I am more and more curious about construction technologies that are being employed in other cities, how might that technology be introduced or best utilized here in our city? We don't have a landscape much like Nashville or even like Austin, but we can certainly benefit from any avenue that would bring more affordable, economically sustainable development to our city. So how do we, who's out there doing it, who's doing it well, who's got lessons learned to share? So those are some of the future work session topics that we'll kind of explore. And our techie hopefully will bring us some avenues that we can explore to kind of guide some of that conversation. So be on the lookout for those pieces to show up on our next agenda, or 2 or 3. Mr. Vice Chair, do you have anything for the good of the body?
I would just mention that after a discussion at zoning committee the other week, it did kind of highlight that I think a number of us would like to see our affordable housing drivers in our community also present as far as future work session topics, but we can discuss it greater length. I think that's something we should expect to see in front of this body down the road.
Okay.
Madam Chair, 2 quick things. CDOT actually just, I think it's still open, had a survey regarding parking. So if you haven't seen it, I can send that out to the group. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that City Council is having a meeting to discuss infrastructure on Monday from 1 until 3:45, which conflicts with our executive committee meeting. So I'm not sure if you want to move it, but I would not be able to attend that at that time. And it might be a conversation you might want to listen in on.
Thank you for that invitation.
I'm just joking.
I get the underlying message. I think one of the opportunities that we explored for executive committee meeting for December, due to council moving it to 4 o'clock, we explored at one point moving it to Tuesday. That is now obviously a very viable option. And yeah, let's chat offline after the meeting for that. Commissioner Lansdale, please.
Still a question for Allison. Have they decided on what the format of that meeting is? Are we eligible to be there as citizens, as participants, as observers?
That's a great question. I will probably know more about it at 3 o'clock today. So I don't know the answer to that right now.
Maybe a quick email follow
Yeah,
about
sure.
how our role might be influenced by that decision. Thanks.
Finally, I'd like to prepare our subcommittees for probably a standing agenda topic that I will ask for co-sign on from executive committee. As we have formed these subcommittees and as the desire for our work program every year is that all items be checked off. I will probably introduce the idea that we have a to-do and review agenda item on every agenda for the remainder of this fiscal year. And that to-do or review agenda item is basically kind of a very short report out of the subcommittee's progress for the prior month. That could be as short as 2 minutes. It could be as long as 10 minutes. But every subcommittee established probably should be prepared for that. And I just wanted to put the heads up out there just so that we, as a body, yes, we have these subcommittees, but if someone who's not on one of the subcommittees wanted to get an update or provide a point of feedback, that there's ample opportunity to do that. So just a very simple, here's where we're at, here's how many times we met, here's the hiccup that we can't get across, or whatever the case may be, kind of a check-in monthly. We would reserve about 10 minutes of our agenda for that purpose. And with that, I will recognize Commissioner Wilden.
Motion to close. Wilden.
She beat Walton finally. We have a motion on the floor to close, to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sealy. All in favor? None opposed. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.